Good morning, my friends. How are you? Welcome to another edition of Behind the Mic with me, Mike Avery, here in the Outdoor Magazine radio studio on a rainy morning. How are you this morning, my friends? Midweek, it's hump day, and like I say, a rainy hump day. A lot warmer though than it was last week when we were in Ohio at this time. I can't believe the way the weather has been on a roller coaster. The temperatures on a roller coaster this fall so far, right? My name is Mike Avery. I'm here behind the mic. Good morning, Cliff. Whoop, where'd you go, Cliff? Good morning. How are you? Hey, Brent. Nice to have you along with us. Mike, Matthew, windy and rainy. Indeed, it is. But warmer. Hey, Wendy. How are you? How's life? How's your sister? I used to work with Wendy's sister at TV5 in Saginaw. Remember Kim Harms? We called her Kimbo. Brad, Debbie, Captain Jim, Uncle Johnny. How are you, Uncle Johnny? Interesting phone call last night. Billy, good morning. How are you? Ted, Mark watching over on YouTube. Matthew said the big girls are coming into Lake Erie. I bet they are this week. Big girls. We're talking walleye here. Roger checking in from Montrose. Jason checking in from the Ira Township Fire Department. My name is Mike Avery. This is another edition of Behind the Mic. So it's actually Mike behind the mic. I've got two microphones in front of me. People say, why do you have two mics? This is my social media mic, and this is my professional broadcast microphone, although they're the same model. What are they? EV 630, something like that. Paul, good morning. Rob, Tim checking in from South Carolina. Matt checking in from Flint. So the fall colors were beautiful this year, weren't they? I say were because they're three mics. I know. Mike behind the mic, Mike. Hey, Skeeter, how are you? Skeeter Beckman from Brenton USA Firearms, BrentonUSA.com, BrentonUSA.com. Brad says, Mike, what day is it? It's hump day. Good morning, Lori. Cliff said, after seeing that nice hunting shack last week, how about asking the listeners to send you pics of their blinds and stand? That's a good idea. It's a good idea, Cliff. I like that. Patrick says he's ready for this cold front. Been a rough week so far chasing deer. It was cold last week in Ohio. It was. See, I don't feel like they went that quick, Eric. I feel like we had a real nice fall color season. I feel like the colors were just beautiful, breathtakingly beautiful. One of the best fall color seasons I can remember. But yeah, they're pretty much gone now. And after today, at least in my neck of the woods, they're going to be gone. You are more than welcome, John. I'm doing good, Max. How are you? Pretty entertaining debate last night, huh? I didn't watch it. Bryce is going pheasant hunting. Hey, good morning, Joe. How are you? It has been, hasn't it? I was just saying, to me, the fall colors this year were just magnificent, breathtaking, beautiful, and some of the best I can remember. Driving down to Ohio, what was it, a week and a half ago? It was just absolutely crazy. Good morning, Scott. Nice talking with you on the phone yesterday. But the fall colors are gone now. And the thing about, I wish the fall color season was about a month long because the thing about it is when they're gone, you know what's coming. I mean, it's nice to have the leaves down if you're hunting, right? If you're bird hunting and if you're deer hunting, it's nice to be able to see through the woods. But the fact that, Max, I didn't realize this. Max is from South Africa. Max, I have hunted in South Africa twice. Interesting, Joe. Hunter Joe says colors are usually brighter in hot drought years. I did not know that. Yeah, I had two very interesting hunts to South Africa. Got some real nice animals. Hello, Martin. Rick says, where'd you go, Rick? Listening to you, school drop-off zone with his son, Mason. Good morning, Mason. How are you? Have a good day at school, buddy. John Sullivan of Lure Lipstick, lurelipstick.com. So when am I coming back, Max? I probably won't. It's one of those things where when I had the TV show, it made a lot of sense to go because I knew I could get several shows out of it. Now that I'm not doing a TV show anymore, I'm staying much closer to home. In fact, I was telling Pat here in the studio, I'm not going anywhere now for a long time. I went to Ontario in August for a bear hunt. I went to, I'm explaining it right now, Max. Just no reason to come back. No reason to come back. I had the experience. I got the animals I wanted. It was very cool. But it's one of those things that now that I've done it, I've done it. You know, at this point, I gotta pick and choose what I'm going to do. And this year I went to Ontario on a bear hunt. I will do that next year. I went to the UP for a bear hunt. I won't do that next year because I won't have a tag. And then I went to Ohio for a whitetail hunt last week. Now, it was a great hunt. I didn't get an animal. In fact, I didn't get a bear this year either. We will be going back to Ohio next year, the third week in October, to hunt with Bill Piles of Ohio Bow Hunting Outfitters. And I would like to invite you to go along if you want. We're going to have openings, I think, next year. Appreciate that, Roy, very much. Good morning, John. How are things at CMU? John is the president of the CMU Bass Fishing Club. And the guy who came up with the term Wednesday After Live, which is pretty tough to go outside and smoke a cigar after the show in the daylight now, right? Because it's dark. No elk hunts planned, Rick. No elk hunts. Unless I get a Michigan tag. The odds of me getting a Michigan tag, I have more chance of lightning coming through this ceiling right here and hitting me on top of my bald head than I do getting a Michigan elk tag. Mark says, fire up chips. Hey, so who's going to win the game this weekend? Michigan State. Post your comments here. Post, like the page, and share. Good morning, George. How are you? So the month of Rocktober is just about over now, isn't it? I mean, Halloween is just a few days away. November, we go from Rocktober to the rut in November. When I was in Ohio, I did have a nice buck, nice 110-inch 8-point, 2.5-year-old 8-point, come in and make a couple of scrapes in front of me. Here's my lightning bolt, eh? Morning, Josh. How are you? Mad Jack checking in on YouTube. Hey, Craig, it was good seeing you down in Ohio, buddy. You going back next year, Craig? I talked with Bill Piles. He said, we're good to go for next year. Hey, Ross, where'd you go, Ross? Good morning, Ross. How are you, buddy? Kevin Coyote Killing King Rot from help me out, Kevin. I got a mental block on the name of you and Josh. Vance got rained out of the combine today. So what do you do, Vance, this time of year? If you get a day off, do you put your feet up and try to catch up on rest? Or are you doing maintenance on the equipment? Cliff said he read that they're now going to have metal detection devices at the Erie Walleye tournaments. Thank you, Kevin. Overdrive Outdoors. Isn't it interesting how that those two dirt bags in that one event have changed the way that we that we look at tournaments? A Colorado mule deer tag, no Ohio for you next year. Well, I'm sorry to hear that, Craig. I mean, I understand. I get it. We did have a good hunt in Ohio. I saw a couple of 2.5-year-old bucks, including one that got my attention. When he walked in, all I saw was his rack walking in front of the blind, and I went, "Oh, there's a shooter." The more I looked at him, he wasn't quite there. Bill's got a 120-inch size limit. I've shot 3 deer over 120 inches. As bad as I wanted to shoot that buck, he just wasn't quite there. And it was a good decision. I mean, he was at 30 yards broadside, quartered away, but it was a good decision not to shoot him. My son James saw about a 130-inch buck, but he didn't come close enough. I hear Craig passed on a 120. Scott Gatza passed on a 130 because he was on a 140-inch farm. So we had a good hunt, and it was cold. Man, it was cold. They will be checking for metal. Isn't that something? Did anybody get in here? I love your. Did anybody get in here? Morning, Mike. Did anybody get in here? Love your group. I'm a little confused by that one, Marty, but I appreciate the comment. Anyway, the rut's coming up. Oh, here's what I wanted to talk about. And I'll talk about this on the radio show as well. Get deer. No, there was some folks who passed, but nobody got a deer. But that's not to be surprised, or not surprising.
Oh, no, not yet.
Oh.
Not yet.
Oh.
I was just telling you that I got a deer.
You got a deer with your, did you hit one?
Yes, the other day.
How much damage?
$4,000.
Oh, you really hit one, did
Yeah.
Pat Johnson got a deer. Saginaw Bay Walleye report. Airborne angler. I saw him posing with some big fish the other day. So, does anybody know an idiot named Shane Sullivan? Now, I say idiot with all due respect. And once I tell you what his comments were, you'll understand why I say that. I posted a picture last week sitting in a blind with my dart and crossbow on shooting sticks in front of me, patiently waiting for a nice buck to walk by. And most of the comments were like, hey, that's an interesting blind. It was a muddy blind. They're fabric quilted insulated blinds. They're actually pretty cool. Shane Sullivan made the dumbest comment I've heard on Facebook in a long time. And that's quite a statement, right? Because, I mean, think about it. Shane Sullivan, I'll say that name again. Shane Sullivan said, it would help if you were a real man and hunted with a bow instead of your baby sister's crossbow. He said, I know crossbows are here to stay, but I'm absolutely against them unless you're 65 and older, handicapped, or using them for turkeys. Now, let's break this down that Shane Sullivan said. Shane Sullivan probably just made several of the stupidest, dumbest, most moronic, ignorant comments I have ever heard on Facebook. Your baby sister's crossbow. Now, normally what I would do is I would have some real fun with this, and I would backtrack on Shane, and I would see what he's hunting with. And if it was anything other than a stick and string that he cut down and made himself, I would make a big deal out of it. Your baby sister's crossbow. I hunted with a recurve for several years. Would that have been acceptable to you, Shane? Would that have reached your standards of the right tool to use for the job? 65 and older, I'm 64, handicapped, or using it for turkeys. Now, how in the hell does it make a difference if you're using it for turkeys? Shane Sullivan, you're an idiot. And if anybody knows Shane, he's not on here this morning. If anybody knows Shane, tell him to come on here and watch this and send me a private message. I'd like to continue the conversation because you're a full-blown idiot. Isn't that stupid? Man. Craig says real hunters use crossbows and hit the woods instead of sitting on the couch. Joe says, I wonder if he hunts with a musket. Good point. If he uses any kind of a gun to hunt with, he should not be talking about somebody using a crossbow and calling it his baby girl's gun or his baby girl's weapon. I have no tolerance for such stuff. Those are the type of comments that do nothing to promote hunting. They do nothing to promote cohesion. And I hate this word now because it's being overused, cohesion in our community. Hey, Mark, it was nice to see you in Ohio. Mark, I'm just talking about Shane Sullivan and his comments. If you were a real man, you'd hunt with a bow instead of your baby sister's crossbow. And I'm going to have some fun with this on the radio show, too. Again, the guy's name is Shane Sullivan. Shane Sullivan wins the Stupid Award of the Month. Somebody said, well, I bet they told Fred Bear the same thing when he picked up a compound, when he went from his recurve and picked up a compound. Let me tell you a little story about Fred Bear. Most of you on here never met Fred Bear. I did meet Fred Bear, and I spent some time with Fred Bear. The first time I ever saw a crossbow was at Grouse Haven up by Rose City at a bear archery hunting camp that Fred Bear was hosting. I had never seen a crossbow before. They were shooting crossbows up there. Fred Bear was looking over their shoulder with a huge amount of interest because he knew that any tool that got people into the woods and got them interested in the sport of bow hunting was a positive, legitimate device. Mike says, and it's a prestigious award, it is. And how does it matter what the game is? Why is it okay, Shane Sullivan, to use a crossbow for turkeys, but it's not okay to use them for deer? Shane, you're an idiot. I'll say it again. Shane Sullivan, you're an idiot.
Okay, let's do it now.
All right. And Shane, you got to remember, you got to be careful who you pick a fight with, because you don't pick a fight with somebody who's got a bigger audience than you do and is more than willing to call you out on it. All right, Pat, here's your audio check. Although I'm not hearing myself in my phones. There we go. Yeah, he probably uses a horse and buggy. He sounds like a man with a mullet. All right, here's an audio check for Pat Johnson in the radio studio. Let me tell you who's coming up on this week's show. Now that I've got this ragging on Shane Sullivan out of my system, although I'm going to go right back at it again for the radio show. Coming up on this week's Outdoor Magazine radio show, Dean Hall of the Michigan Sportsmen Against Hunger, talking about how you can donate your venison that you're not going to eat in your family. You can donate it to a good cause. Then Ted Harpham of Dart and Archery, they are Mark's laughing. They are coming up with some new bows. I want to talk with them about that. Then Nick Buja of the Michigan Wildlife Council. In hour number 2, what I think is going to be an interesting conversation with Michigan's meteorologist, Mark Torregrossa. Mark actually has a home in Florida. He almost lost that house in the hurricane. I want to talk to him about that. But more importantly, talk to him about the weather predictions for the upcoming firearm season and for winter. And I'll tell you this, as he was describing what this winter will likely look like, I said, Mark, you're scaring me. He said, you should be scared for this winter. Then Chad Stewart of the DNR talking about, John says, sorry you didn't get anything on your hunts. Doesn't bother me at all, John. I appreciate you saying that. Doesn't bother me in the least. I had great hunts. I passed on a bear in Ontario. Didn't see a bear in Michigan. Passed on a nice buck in Ohio. Just wasn't quite big enough. I'm happy as can be. Chad Stewart talking about some proposed changes in our elk hunting regulations. Maybe this bolt of lightning will come down. Maybe I will get my elk tag. But then in the Ask Avery segment, I'm going to ask him this question. Chad Stewart, since you said on the Mike Avery Outdoors show a month ago that you admitted the DNR overreacted to the threat of CWD, and since baiting in the Lower Peninsula has been banned because of concerns for CWD, Does that mean we can look for baiting for whitetails to come back in the lower peninsula? That's my question for Chad Stewart on this week's Ask Avery segment. And I'll tell you right now, I know the answer. Not that because he's told me, I just know the answer. And in our third hour, we're going to talk fishing with Mark Romanak of Fishing 411. I saw a post by Mark the other day that he had helped to develop a new crankbait, a new trolling bait. I think that's fascinating. I want to talk with it because I'll tell you what, Mark Romanak probably knows more about trolling and crankbaits maybe than any angler alive today. And I say that because of his work with the precision trolling app, the Troller's Bible. He has done more research and more work on testing crankbaits, the action and the depth than anybody I know of. And of course, we'll wrap it all up with wild game chef extraordinaire Dixie Dave Miner. So that's coming up on this week's radio show. Also, we'll record. John says, please tell me more about the camouflage you're wearing. I've been wearing the VersaSkins. Matt calls him the godfather of trolling. I think that's an accurate term, Matt. Craig says, obviously, the majority of hunters are still using bait, so why keep it banned? One of the guys hunting with us in Ohio said that I think he said the wardens or somebody in his county admitted 80% of hunters are using bait.
30.
Thank you, Mark. Appreciate that. Pat says I got 30 seconds. So in about 20 seconds now, I'm going to switch gears. My focus is going to go from recording this live stream to recording this week's radio show. Now, as a result, I will talk about a lot of the same topics, including my now good friend, Shane Sullivan. So if you hear me rag on Shane Sullivan again, it's because it's a different audience. 4, 3, 2, 1, blast off. Camouflage I'm wearing is VersaSkins, Michigan-based VersaSkins. Just change your skin for the season you're in. You can snap on and zip on an outer shell of a different camouflage pattern. Very, very slick and very, very warm. You as well, my friend. Have a good day as well, Brent. How to licking, better yet, how to food plots. How to apple trees. And those are my questions for Chad. I think Chad's a good guy. And we'll have a good conversation. All right, my friends, I hope you can join me tonight at 7 o'clock for another edition of Wednesday Night Live. In the meantime, I've got to go to work, although you really can't call this work, can you? Have a good day. Here's Mike Avery. Well, thank you, Ken Hunter, for that introduction, and welcome to another edition of the Outdoor Magazine radio show right here on the Outdoor Magazine Radio Network. More than 30 stations, AM and FM stations, across the great state of Michigan. I'm here for 3 hours every week, have been for years, plan to be for many more years. Although, hey, I know my plans don't mean anything, but if the big guy says I'm going to be around for a while, I will certainly have no problem with that. Weren't the fall colors magnificent this year? It was the best fall color season I've seen in a long time. Breathtakingly, beautifully, magnificent. Just wonderful. Now they're gone now, right? And that's to be expected. I wish the fall color season lasted a full month, but it doesn't. It only lasts for just a few weeks. But they were absolutely beautiful this year, and I'm kind of sorry to see the colors go. Of course, if you're a hunter, it's always nice to have those leaves drop, isn't it? If you're a squirrel hunter, if you're an upland bird hunter, if you're a deer hunter, it's nice to have those beautiful leaves drop so you can see into the woods. You can see further into the woods. And isn't it surprising how the woods will look different in November than they do in even September? You can be sitting in a spot or walking through a spot in September and say, man, this is thick. I can't see into the woods at all. Come back there in November and go, oh man, I can see 200 yards over there. So it changes the feeling of the experience in the woods completely. The month of Rocktober is almost over now. Halloween coming up here very, very soon. So I'm kind of sorry to see Rocktober go, but a lot of deer hunters are very happy to see Halloween, to see the beginning of the whitetail rut. Now, the whitetail rut, the breeding season, the time when the testosterone in the bucks increases. Some of the bigger bucks might be a little easier to see during daylight because they're preoccupied with breeding. They're not as cautious as they might be the rest of the year. And that's why a lot of deer hunters look forward to the rut. People will say, well, when's the rut going to be this year? And I don't pretend to be an expert at all. But I always thought the rut kind of kicked off in, kind of for good in Halloween, goes through the first week and a half of November. Statistically and biologically in Michigan, the majority of does have been bred by the November 15th opener of the firearm season. And that's why the season was put at that date. At least that's what I've been told by DNR wildlife biologists. Now, when I was down in Ohio last week, we did see some signs of the bucks starting to get a little rutted up. Their necks were starting to get pretty swollen up. I had a real nice 2.5-year-old 8-point come in front of me at 30 yards and make a couple of scrapes and work a licking branch. In fact, I wanted to shoot him. I was hunting with Bill Piles of Ohio Bow Hunting Outfitters, ohiobowhuntingoutfitters.com. In north of Columbus, kind of in central Ohio, in some very beautiful country, very wooded, very big timber, a lot of hills, and a lot of big whitetails. We being a group of Outdoor Magazine radio listeners, went down there to hunt with Bill for the first time last year. We were back again this year. In fact, we're going back next year as well. If you want to join us, I'd love to have you. We will go once again the third week in October. People say, well, why don't you wait and go during the rut? Well, there's two reasons there. Number one, it's more expensive to go on a rut hunt, but also with most outfitters, it's harder to book a hunt during the rut because you've got guys who have been coming back year after year after year, and they've got those rut hunts locked up. So we went the third week in October, and man, was it cold. Remember how cold it got there for a while? And then we had that beautiful Indian summer weather. It was so cold in Ohio that you would figure that cold would have the big bucks up on their feet. And it did, but it was also really, really windy. I didn't shoot a buck. I did pass on that 8-point. Bill has a 120-inch size minimum. That means the buck has to have roughly 120 inches of bone on its head. This buck, about 110 inches. He just needed a little bit more. And as hard as I looked at him and as much as I wanted him to have just another 10 inches of bone on top of his head, I just couldn't make it happen. So I let him pass, and I'm completely happy with that. But it was, I think, the last morning of the hunt. I'm up on top of this hill in a beautiful setting. There was a 4-point in front of me and a fawn. They were feeding on acorns in front of me. And I see the 4-point look off to my right, and he's starting to get a little bit nervous. I'm thinking, that's a good sign. And I was sitting on an elevated, it was a blind. It was one of those muddy, M-U-D-D-Y, muddy blinds. That's the brand name, Muddy Blinds. They're fabric blinds, and they're kind of quilted. They're kind of insulated. I do like them. And so I'm about 6 feet off the ground. I'm watching this oak ridge. The 4-point looks off to the right. And then right in front of me, like 5 yards in front of me, maybe 7, 8 yards in front of me, all I see is this very white rack come walking in front of me. And my heart stopped there for a second. I thought, there's my shooter. There's my 120, 130 inch buck. Just didn't turn out to be the case. Oh, well. So we're going back next year. Oh, an interesting comment. While I was down there, I was, of course, posting pictures and posting video. A guy by the name of Shane Sullivan, who should be just so embarrassed. He should be so embarrassed, in my opinion. I posted a picture of me overlooking that same oak ridge, and I've got my dart and crossbow in front of me on shooting sticks, waiting for that big buck. Now, keep in mind, remember this, right? I had been hunting for the last few years with a recurve. I quit hunting with my recurve because I wasn't shooting it enough, and I didn't have the confidence that I could make a quick, clean, humane killing shot, which is what all hunters strive to do. All ethical hunters strive to do. So I thought, listen, Avery, you know you're not going to be practicing much this year, so why not just go back to the crossbow and increase your odds of making the shot that needs to be made on an animal? So I did, and I'm completely fine with that. Shane Sullivan. Did I say his name was Shane Sullivan? Shane Sullivan made a comment. It would help if you were a real man and hunted with a bow instead of your baby sister's crossbow. And then he went on to further make a stupid statement. I know crossbows are here to stay, but I'm absolutely against handicapped who are using them for turkeys. I don't even know where to start. Now, normally what I would do is I would backtrack him on social media and find out what he was using. And if it was anything other than a stick and string, and if it was anything other than a musket, I'll guarantee you that I don't get. I suspect he's using a compound, but there's nothing wrong with a compound. But why does it matter if I'm turkey hunting, it's okay to use a crossbow? I don't get that. It's not okay to use a crossbow for deer, but it's okay for turkey. Somebody else said, and they said, Shane, you're kind of an idiot. That's probably the same thing they told Fred Bear when he picked up a compound. Well, here's where this story, I think, takes an interesting turn. Remember, I spent a little bit of time with Fred Bear. I don't pretend to have known him well, but I did spend some time with him at his Grouse Haven hunting camp near Rose City, Michigan. The first time I ever saw a crossbow was at Grouse Haven with the bear archery people on the range at Grouse Haven, and Fred Bear was looking over their shoulder with a great deal of interest, saying, that's an interesting piece of gear there. This might get more people interested in the sport of archery and hunting. So I'll tell you this for a fact, because I saw it with my own eyes. Fred Bear had no problem with crossbows. So why, Shane Sullivan, do you have a problem with crossbows and you can belittle other hunters for using it? Such comments are so stupid and so ignorant. They do nothing to further the sport of hunting. They do nothing to further the sport of bow hunting. They do nothing to cause cohesion in our hunting community. And I hate the word community because it's overused these days. Let people hunt their hunt. We got enough going on in the world these days without getting all this junk and negative energy involved in our beloved sport of hunting. So Shane Sullivan, I hope you're proud of yourself, because you made the stupidest comment I have seen on Facebook this month. And that's a big, big deal. That's a big award. So congrats to you, Shane. Congrats to you. We'll take a break here in the Outdoor Magazine Show. When we come back, Dean Hall talking about Michigan Sportsmen Against Hunger and how you can donate your venison this upcoming season. Okay, Shane Sullivan. Times have changed, and so should you. You're my turd of the month. There, I got that out of my system. All right, my friends, have a good day. It looks like it's going to be a rainy day, at least until afternoon or so. Then it's going to open up a little bit or clear up a little bit. And I hope you can join me tonight at 7 o'clock for another edition of Wednesday Night Live. That's me tonight, Wednesday Night Live. Princess, LOL. You did find him. Hey, Paul, send me a private message, would you please? Send me a private message, because I couldn't find him on Facebook. Paul Fournier, send me a private message here on Facebook with his with a link to his page, so I can learn a little bit more about him. All right, my friends, have a great day. Thanks for joining me on this edition of Behind the Mic. Hope to see you tonight, 7 o'clock, for another edition of Wednesday Night Live.